In this lesson, we're going to create the seam for our tileable texture. Alright, so we built the blocks in our last lesson, and now we're ready to come in here and start to build around the seam of our construction plane. Alright, so let's grab one of these blocks, and I'm going to grab my Move tool, and with my Snap tools turned on, let's go ahead and hold down Shift, and let's drag this out. Now I'm placing these blocks to where they are intersecting the seams of our construction plane here. We're going to make this a copy, and we'll hit OK. Now you'll see that this is overlapping that seam, and we're doing this for a very specific reason. If I were to come in here and fill up my construction plane and never go outside the border, we would be able to see where this texture is tiling, because we would have a very noticeable seam around this area. Okay, so the blocks would just come up, and then we would have these straight lines in all of these different stones. So what we want to do is we want to set it up to where this is overlapping, and we would never ever be able to see where the texture begins and where it ends. And this is the overall goal whenever creating seamless or tileable textures. So let's overlap, and we're just going to overlap it by one grid point here. And the main thing that we need to remember whenever we are creating these tileable or seamless textures is we want to make sure that the left seam is exactly the same as the right seam, that they're going to butt up properly together. Now, with that, we need to make sure that the top and bottom seam will butt up properly together. So we kind of have to think a little bit ahead. So what does this mean? Well, we need to make sure that whatever is falling off of the construction plane on this side is on the construction plane on this side. Same thing for the top as well as the bottom. So let's go ahead and drag this across, hold down Shift, and we'll make a copy of this. And we're going to make sure that whatever is hanging off is on this side of the construction plane. So let's hit OK. And we're ready to go. Now let's go ahead and move this out of the way here. Now we also need to make sure that we have the top and the bottom here. So what we have to do at this point is go ahead and just select these two. Let's hold down Shift, and let's drag these down. Now whatever is hanging off is what's going to be on the bottom here. So let's hit OK. So you can see here that the remainder of this block is now sitting right on top of our construction plane here, and the same thing at this point. Now you can see here that this is hanging off, and it's just that little part of this block is right here. Now let's make sure that we have this correct. So one way that we can test this is by doing a little tiling test here. So let's select all 5 of these objects here. Let's group them really quickly, and we're just going to make a temporary group. Now with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap these together. Alright, so let's actually turn off our snapping for right now, because this is not going to snap to the grid point properly, simply because it's just outside of the bounds here. So let's make a copy of this group, and let's put these right on top of one another. Okay. Let's hit OK. Now you'll see that it is tiling properly. Now if I move this over to the left, you can see that we're missing that seam there, and these are not tiling on top. Let's move it back over to where this edge is right on top of itself, and you'll see that this is going to tile properly. Now we could take all of these, we could group those, and then we could hold down Shift, drag that up. Let's make sure that those blocks are right on top of one another, and you'll notice that those construction plane seams match up perfectly. So we know that this is going to tile properly so far. Let's delete out that group. Let's select this, hit Group, Ungroup, and actually before we do that, let's group, ungroup. Let's select this one here and delete it. Let's select this object and do ungroup again. Alright, so now we're down to those individual pieces. Now let's come in And let's start to add in some of these other pieces along the seam. So we're going to build this out until the entire seam is covered. So I'm just going to grab some pieces. I'm going to hold down Shift. Let's drag this out. And some of these, before we can do that, let's hit Cancel. Let's make sure that we have our snapping on. Now, as we go through this, you can have some of the seams right on the construction plane. You don't have to make sure that every block is overlapping. You don't have to do that. So I can come in with this one, I can grab it, hold down Control, or I'm sorry, Shift, and then copy that over. Now, one thing that we want to make sure is that if something is overlapping, it does need to overlap down here, so the opposite. Now, it's not touching the left seam, okay, and it's not touching the right seam, so we only have to worry about this one and then this one. All right, so let's hold down Shift, let's drag that down, and let's take the remainder of this block and have it overlap on this block. All right. So let's take in another shape here. Let's grab this one. Let's hold down Shift and let's drag that over. And I'm just trying to look at how I want this to space out. So I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. Here we go. And then let's snap that right into place there. Now that's not going to fit properly. So let's take a look at how we can get this done. Let's delete that one out. We have 4 grid spaces here to fit. We have this object that would fit there just fine. We could go ahead and do that. I think I would be comfortable with that, just placing it on there without overlapping. So let's hold down Shift, place that there. Now, if you want to put something else there, you can, but because it's not overlapping, I can place something else down here. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. So let's come in here and let's get a hold of, let's see, let's grab this one and let's pull this down right across here. That's going to look pretty good. And I'll hit OK on that. That's going to fit there just fine. Nothing's overlapping here, okay, because nothing's overlapping here. So that looks good. Let's come in here and let's have something overlap right here because we have this one line that's going to be a problem for us. So let's come in here and let's grab this big guy here. Let's hold down Shift, and I'm going to have it overlap right there. And let's make another copy of it. Hold down Shift and drag it across and hit OK. So we have this one section, one grid length overlapping, and then we've got it made up right here. All right. Let's come in here. Let's add some more. So let's grab our green. Let's make sure that we're taking care of the seam. And I'm going to place that right in there. Hit OK. And I'm looking at 4 grid spaces right here. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to hold down Shift and let's rotate him 180 degrees. And let's place it right in there. Now we do have a bit of an issue here. We're going to run into a problem where we're going to have this little bit kind of hanging off, and that's going to be an issue for us. So we have to do a little bit of work here as far as getting that taken care of. So one issue, or one way that I see around it, is by flipping this back over. Let's go ahead and rotate it 180 degrees again. Let's take this guy and place him right there. Well, I don't think that's going to work either. Well, let's see here. Got a couple of problems. Let's move this up 1. Let's take this guy. Let's move that up 1. Let's take this. Let's move that up 1. We'll have to do the same thing here. Okay. And let's take this guy. Hold down Shift. Plop that there. Hit OK. And then let's take this and put it right there. All right. So now that we have that, let's take this guy and let's put him right here and hit OK. So we've taken care of that issue, and it looks like we've got one space for that 5 grid to go into. So let's hold down Shift, drag this over, hit OK. Let's rotate it 90 degrees. Let's move it over. And actually that was a 6. So let's take that out. Let's hold down Shift. There's our 5. Now we could go ahead and have this moved over here, but the problem that we have is that we can't have that overlapping. So let's just move it over 1. And looking at that, don't really care much for that, to be honest. Let's go ahead and rotate it 90 degrees. I don't like blocks being in the same direction right next to one another. It just doesn't feel right. Okay, so let's put that right up against that seam right there. And let's put something right in here. So we haven't used this little guy yet. So let's hold down Shift and let's pop that right in there. Hit OK. And now we have this seam pretty much built out. Let's go ahead and put something here. So I'm going to drag this out. Hit OK. Let's rotate it. I'm going to hit E on the keyboard to do that. So rotate it 90 degrees. Put that in that position. And let's take care of this bottom here. So the bottom, we have a 4 space here. So we could use this guy. Let's use this one right here. Okay. Hold on Shift. Let's pop that in there. And this is going to have to butt right up against that. Actually, I don't like that because that would mean that this brick is going to be right next to that one. And I just really don't care much for that design there. So let's take this guy. We haven't used him enough. Let's hold down Shift and drag that in there. That's a 2 spot, but that's going to create this. So you can see kind of the tug of war that we have here whenever we are creating these seams here. So let's come in here and let's take out, may have to change this one up here. And again, this is all part of the process. Once you get down to the last little bit, trying to fit in those bricks, that's when most of the work comes in. So let's take a look at, should have done 2 on these bigger bricks. Should have had at least 2 hanging off, not just the 1. Well, that's okay. We can work on it. Let's move in. Let's take a look at this guy. Well, I don't want him right there next to that one. Let's go ahead and move. Where's our 3? Here's our 3. Let's move that right in there. Let's have that overlap by, well, that's not going to work either. So we're running into a little bit of an issue. This is going to be a problem for us. One way or another, we are going to have one skinny brick in here somewhere. Let's take this guy, and let's drop it right on here. Okay, let's hit OK. Let's take this guy, let's drop it on there. Okay, oops, let's delete that one out. So what we have right here is we have one brick on this one and then the other here. So we've closed up that seam. We've got enough room in here to start working. All right, so we've closed those up, did a little bit of reworking here. Looking at this one right here, I don't like, well, I have to have that brick there because it's a seam. So these are all things that you're going to come into. So you got to look at a very organic way of thinking here on how to situate these different blocks. Now, if it helps you, you can come in and you can start to build out even more blocks. You know, you could have one really small one that takes up one grid length there. You could do that if you like. Not a big issue. Now, what we're going to do in our next lesson is we're going to come in here and we are going to begin filling in the rest of this. And this is where we start to create a few custom blocks to help us fit things a little bit easier. All right? So we're going to go ahead and get started in that in our next lesson.